Hey, am I an influencer now? I'm going to talk and walk at the same time because I thought this would be funny, but it really isn't all that funny. It's not all that convenient either. It's really hard to look at your phone. But this is a cool thing to do now, right? You can be an influencer. So I thought I'd talk about influencers in general, and this is a fun one for you guys. Creatine is so effective. Everyone should be taking it, and I feel like there's just not enough posts on social media telling people to take creatine. It's just like sleep. There's not enough people telling you to make sure that you sleep 8 hours. And I really feel like people were dropping the ball here because there just aren't enough posts telling people to take creatine and to sleep. But where we're really failing is that we're not telling people the importance of walking, which is why I'm walking right now. It's really important that you walk because walking is just so good for you. And while I'm at it, I just thought I would let everyone know that you should drink water. I know that's a radical new one. No one's aware of that, but it's really important for you to drink water, because if you don't drink water, you can die. Yeah. Now that's not true of creatine, but if you don't sleep and you don't drink water, those ones will kill you. So it's really important that you drink water and that you sleep. Walking and creatine are kind of optional things, but everyone should be doing them. And that's really the most important thing that we can possibly talk about these days. Just like how it's really important that we talk about mental health. Mental health is so important. We should all be talking about it, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm talking about mental health. That'll be $120. You can PayPal me or Venmo me or whatever. That's my fee, because I just talked about mental health. No solutions or anything. Just make sure you talk about it, right? So anyways, if you made it this far through the video, I hope you had a good laugh. But now I'm going to talk about something that actually is serious here. So this thing on creatine, it's kind of a funny thing because you listen to these different influencers talk about creatine, and everyone hypes it up as if it's this incredible thing, which I suppose on some level creatine is an incredible thing if you actually understand physiology and the fact that your body does produce creatine. Your body does that naturally, even if you don't supplement with it. And also, if you're eating meat, I hope everyone out there is eating meat. It's good for you. It's full of vitamins, it's full of minerals, and it has creatine in it. And most people don't eat enough protein, so you should be eating meat. Now, why am I even bringing this up? Well, I'm bringing this up because experts such as Greg Nuckols and Mike Israetel will tell you that anabolic steroids, well, they only help a little. We've all heard Greg say this. They only help a little, and Greg wrote a whole article on this saying that steroids add maybe 5%, the 10% absolute max. They only add about 5%, and we've all heard Mike Israetel say steroids only add about 5%, like they only help a little. That's the reason why there's a guy walking around at 400 pounds with single-digit body fat, and people that are squatting over 1,000 pounds and deadlifting over 1,000 pounds, is because steroids only help a little. That's an interesting thing. So steroids only help a little, and you know what? I'll give you a point here. Ilya Ilyin, he was hitting these amazing lifts, and then I think he snatched like 190. Okay, and then after he popped positive for steroids, he snatched 140. So if anything, steroids actually made him weaker, because after he popped positive for steroids, he snatched 140 kilos. So if we take Greg's logic of comparing tested lifters to untested lifters, and we took that logic and we just said, well, look at a guy who when he tested clean, he lifted like 190, and then after he tested positive, he only lifted 140. It actually made him weaker. You see how flawed that is? Anyways, the point being, then these influencers like Mike and Greg will also tell you that creatine adds 10%. That's amazing. So let me get this straight. Steroids, anabolic steroids, add 5%. 10% absolutely max if you took everything but the kitchen sink, right? But yet, creatine is going to add 10%. So that basically means that creatine is more effective than steroids. And while I'm at it, I might point out to you guys that there's studies out there on caffeine, and a hefty dose of caffeine can add 10%. So you mean to tell me that people are killing themselves and risking their career over it. You know, if you're an Olympic athlete and you get banned, people are risking their careers taking anabolic steroids, which do have negative consequences for your health. And they could just take creatine and they'd get 10%, and then they could take caffeine and get another 10%, and that would be more effective than steroids. So I realize that this is all bullshit, because when I hear this stuff, I'm like, no, that's a crock of shit. Everyone knows some guy who, you know, hopped on trend and doubled his fucking lifts and packed on a ton of muscle. If it didn't work, people wouldn't be doing it. It's kind of like, you know, you'll hear people debate back and forth whether or not growth hormone makes a difference, and yet, like, every high level athlete you can think of is using growth hormone. So don't get me wrong, growth hormone is insanely expensive, so most people aren't using growth hormone, but high level athletes do, because they can afford it. If you're making $10 million a year to play basketball, you can afford to spend a couple thousand a month on your growth hormone. Probably your amateur bodybuilders and amateur CrossFitters and stuff like that aren't spending that money on growth hormone, because that would be crazy expensive. But steroids are pretty cheap if you think about it. People buy steroids for, you know, I don't know, hundreds of dollars. So, you know, if you're making $50,000 a year to compete in CrossFit or powerlifting or bodybuilding or whatever, you know, maybe you would spend a couple $100s on steroids. And that probably persists because it is more effective than, say, caffeine and creatine. But, you know, if you listen to the influencers, this is the part that I'm hammering on here. If you listen to the influencers, anabolic steroids only add, you know, 5%, 10% max. But yet, creatine adds 10%, and caffeine adds 10%. The only reason I bring this up is because I just want you guys to think critically, okay? I certainly am not encouraging anyone to use anabolic steroids. That is definitely not something I advocate for. I'm actually very opposed to it. I point out to people all the time, why are you doing this? You don't make a living doing this. Now, if you're a pro athlete watching me, then, you know, I understand your decision. I would be taking steroids too if I made $1 million to play a sport. I don't. I make $0. No one's ever paid me to play a sport, so there's no reason for me to spend money on this stuff. I don't use creatine. It's not worth the money. Like, what fucking difference is it gonna make? You know, I can go from snatching 100 to snatching 110. That still won't put you on the Olympic stage. So, and I don't actually believe it makes that big of a difference. I don't think that I'm suddenly going to snatch another 10 or 11 kilos just by taking creatine, because I've taken creatine and it didn't do jack shit. So, you know, I went from snatching 105 to snatching 105. It didn't make a difference when I took creatine. So I don't believe that it actually matters. But, you know, everyone wants to tell you how good it is for you. Now, whether or not it has neuroprotective effects and stuff like that, it's a different discussion. And for that purpose, it might be worth you taking creatine. Okay, if you're interested in the brain and the neurological system, and how, you know, creatine does appear to have some protective effects against, you know, head injuries, concussions, TBI, etc. That's probably a really good argument for you taking creatine. But the idea that it's going to make you 10% stronger, not really convinced there. Same thing for all this other shit like beta alanine and things like that. I don't really think this stuff makes a difference. I've tried it. I'm telling you, I've tried it. I'm telling you, it didn't make any goddamn difference. Caffeine feels great, though. We all love caffeine, right? Everybody loves caffeine. And, you know, I don't really think caffeine is going to make you that much stronger. I don't believe that. I've certainly tried dumb shit when I was younger, like taking 600 milligrams of caffeine at once. It just made me feel fucking jazzy. And I was actually like too overstimulated. Like, it just nervous energy. It actually fucked up my lifting. So I don't think that taking huge doses of caffeine is necessarily a great idea either. But, you know, whatever. Point being here, you guys need to be more critical of these things. You know, when these influencers tell you, oh, hey, you know, steroids only help a little, but caffeine 10%, creatine 10%, you know, maybe stop listening to those people.